Hi, it's Dr. Jenn Kennedy. I'm a sexologist and couples therapist. The Pleasure Project podcast is about sex and relationships. So this includes discussions on desire, dysfunction, dissatisfaction, exploration of all things sex related. So sometimes I'll do toy reviews and we'll look at trends, and sometimes I'll also enlist other experts. We'll increase your insight and enhance your pleasure. So tune in. Hi, in this episode, I sit down with Emma Rollin Moore. She is a lot of things, actually, but she is a co-owner of Heritage Goods and Supply, which is a chain of 3 stores in the Santa Barbara area that are like mercantile. She's also a yogi. She's got lots of experience around nutrition. She does all kinds of cool fermenting and sourdough making classes and that type of thing. But we're specifically in my lane talking about aphrodisiacs, adaptogens. Like, what are those? They're good for you. I'll tell you that. We talk about things around like cooking and spices and that type of thing that you can add to your foods to help with your arousal, to help with your menopause, to help with various things like energy that matter to most women. So tune in and hear a fun conversation, perfect for the holidays, with me and Emma. Okay, so welcome back. My guest today is Emma Rollin Moore. Emma is an educator, nutritional therapy practitioner, yogi, chef, and holistic wellness coach. Growing up on a farm in the Central Valley of California, she gained an appreciation for the earth, local ingredients, and home-cooked meals. After her children were born, she started fermenting, canning, and dabbling in urban homesteading and nutrition. She completed her holistic nutrition certification in 2021 with an eye on women's health. Emma is co-founder of Women's Heritage and Heritage Goods and Supply, which are 3 curated country stores in Santa Barbara County. She has authored 2 books and teaches group and private holistic wellness and cooking classes centered on women's wellness, fermentation, food preservation, culinary medicine, and seasonal cooking. Emma is also my yoga teacher. So I've known her for over 10 years now. She's been undoing all the harm I do to my body all day long in all the sitting. So welcome.
That's right. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So we had talked kind of offline about some fun ideas because you have this whole area of knowledge that feels related to general wellness, especially for women, and also sexual wellness.
Yeah.
So thought that would be fun to kind of drop into some of that stuff. And you had given me some ideas of concoctions and herbs and spices and stuff. So we're going to talk through all of those today.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so let's kick it off with aphrodisiacs. That's kind of a fun word that we've all heard over the years. And what are aphrodisiacs?
Good question. And that's kind of why we're here too with you. Aphrodisiacs are this idea, they're substances that are thought, okay, this is not promoted by the Food and Drug Administration or saying that they would agree with us, but they're thought to provoke and kind of enlighten our senses, improve our libido, our sexual drive, pleasure, even kind of get us in the mood. So that's kind of in a nutshell. And they're substances. So they show up in food, they show up in herbs and spices. And they're also, just so you know, you can also, there's chemical compounds that are made to also be aphrodisiacs as well.
At the store, I've seen things promoting themselves as such. And I'm like, I actually bought one of them and I tried it and I was like, I don't feel any different.
Really?
But that was, but that was a pill. I wanted the quick bullet, magic bullet. I'm willing to try anything that promises to,
I love it.
enhance my sex drive. I love that.
Yes, I love it.
So what are some examples of what we understand more, not in the packaged side, but in the natural side of things? What are
Okay, this is what I love to share is just how food can be medicine and it can be medicine for our sex life. So let's go to something really simple, chocolate. I love chocolate. I know that you don't love chocolate.
I feel kind of neutral about it, but I know some people are really crazy about it.
So cacao itself, that raw cacao and then really beautiful cacao powder itself, it has the nutrients in them. They release chemicals like serotonin and dopamine. So really chocolate has tryptophan in it, and that's that amino acid that we hear about during Thanksgiving, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But what it
Sleepy.
does is it relaxes us and it gets us in the mood when it comes to cacao
Mm-hmm.
for our sexual
So
encounters.
when you look at a chocolate, like at Trader Joe's or at Whole Foods or whatever, and it says percentage, and you
Yes.
want it the higher cacao, is that
You
helpful?
do, but I always look at, can we try to get single origin? So I'm going to sound snobby here, but yeah, you're wanting it more to be raw cacao, or that you're having that pure dark chocolate. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be, 90 something percent, but just that the more pure, the better, I would
Mm-hmm.
say.
Okay.
Yeah. And when possible, bean to bar. So that's, you're getting your single origin, and that's
Bean
really
to
amazing.
bar. That's like the new
Bean to
farm to
bar.
table.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
All right.
And then another ingredient along those lines with serotonin and dopamine is vanilla.
Mm.
The vanillin in the vanilla has been known, it's thought to also kind of give us that dopamine hit and kind
Mm-hmm.
of raise our, kind of enhance our senses. And it's not just, so it's that vanilla that you can cook with, but it's also the vanilla scent too. So I think that's important. I know we're talking about food, but yeah, so just who
So
knew the vanilla
atmospherically too,
scent?
like the candles
Yeah,
and that kind of thing. That's why they're
yeah.
so popular.
They've done studies on this, and you look at, like, people are feeling more attracted, and like even meeting your mate. So if you're
Well,
interested,
I do love vanilla, so I get to check that
okay,
box. I put vanilla in my
there you go.
lattes, so there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So chocolate, vanilla. What else do we have?
Okay, so think about spices, and just like chilies. So you could eat chilies or add
Mm-hmm.
some chili powder to things. So that kind of makes sense, though, right? If you think about chili peppers, and I'm actually talking those spicier, not like the mild chili peppers,
Mm-hmm.
but that little kick of spice, that hot, opens up our blood vessels and gets things moving.
Mm-hmm.
You have most likely eaten a chili pepper before,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of feel your nerve endings
Like
like
it hurts
coming
so
to
good.
yeah, it hurts so good. And that's kind of the idea too with food, that kind of stimulates our blood flow, gets
Mm-hmm.
us in that excited moment, get more in that mood of excitement and kind of bring it on. So
Yeah.
you can kind of see, like, how if you paired cacao with a little bit of spice, you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of like kickstart it, but then bring it right with that
I've
tryptophan,
actually
like
seen
into
that where
that.
they mix that, right? They've got dark
Yeah.
chocolates with
Yeah.
peppers in it.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So now it's
Just
starting
wait
to
till
make
I tell you some other
sense.
ingredients, and you could see how you could mix them all together and have
Uh-huh.
a nice little love potion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I like, yeah, the chili peppers, the hot, just make sure you wash your fingers before you
Yes. Yeah. Or, I mean, it can be simple,
get
really,
together.
Dr. Jen, it could be simple as putting some hot sauce on some things too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you can think of it that way, that it doesn't have to be like all of these ingredients, but like maybe you add,
Mm-hmm.
or you can get spicy with your partner and maybe put a little drops of hot sauce on you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry.
I love
That's
it.
what I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Because I
There you
mean,
go.
food.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then just thinking, yeah,
Okay. What are some other ideas? I think cayenne was one of
yeah.
them you had mentioned to me offline, right?
Yes.
Cayenne is
So
another type of pepper.
cayenne's another type of pepper. What's cool about thinking about food is that there are all these properties. So we have the cacao and the vanilla, that dopamine and that serotonin. We have that cayenne, or any like those hot spicy peppers, improving blood flow. We can look at things like oysters and even watermelon. Isn't that cool?
Mm.
That and honey that can start to increase blood flow, which is
Mm-hmm.
really cool. So there's this nitric oxide in honey, and we want to think about with honey that it kind of makes sense, like honey is flowy, so it helps kind of open, like get our kind of blood flow moving. And so you can think of it that way. The zinc in the oysters does that. So
Mm-hmm.
oysters, I think we probably all know this. I feel like oysters, that's the one thing that they're hailed for, is
Mm-hmm.
like you can have a I feel like Valentine's Day, sexy evening, have your
Mm-hmm.
oysters and champagne and your strawberries. And we'll get to strawberries in just a second. So those are some examples on just kind of, and pistachios too, is that same idea, that property of like lowering our blood pressure. Does that make sense? In a
Mm-hmm.
healthy state. And then there's something like hibiscus that's also good for blood flow, but helps our heart open and it creates that vasodilation, which is beautiful,
So
which
when you say heart open, I usually think of you like asking me to like
like yoga.
yoga heart opening, but you're talking literally the valves
Literally, the
in your
valves are
heart.
opening. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, and hibiscus
Hibiscus.
is super nutritious for us too. And so we can look at just brewing your own tea. There's also, if you're into, making a cheese platter, there you could just they have candied hibiscus, but it's still going to be yummy. But just those
Mm-hmm.
properties of getting your blood flow moving, which is beautiful. Some research would say that hibiscus promotes that vasodilation and that
Mm-hmm.
opening, that vasodilation with the blood vessels, and that's
So vasodilation too, from our side of things, is typically you've got desire first, and then when we talk about arousal is the physiological response.
yeah,
So that's when the blood flow starts to happen. And for women, it's typically a swelling of the genitals, right? The
yes,
widening of the eyes.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes your mouth goes dry. It's like those are the indication
absolutely,
that you're getting more interested or
yes,
zoning in on sexually relevant
and I think
information.
that's what's an important point is that some of your listeners might be like, well, hello, yeah, it increases vasodilation. But the idea is you're drinking this and then you're also thinking about getting in the mood,
Hmm.
because yeah, it is also known as heart healthy,
Yeah.
the hibiscus, but it's also that, that pairing that with the mindset and getting yourself in that
Hmm.
state too.
Hmm.
So potassium is also one of those things. And I just kind of highlighted berries, things like, well, berries, we'll get to that actually.
Hmm.
Those are more antioxidants, but potassium, things like bananas don't really sound sexy, but maybe they are for some people
Mm.
actually. But think about
They
passion
look sexual.
fruits. They look
Yeah.
sexual. That's, I know. But
I love bananas, but I don't think of them as enhancing, but that's
that's what
good.
I thought too. That's what I thought too. But passion fruit it
Mhm.
has it in the name. But with that potassium, you could think of it as the potassium actually helps with our sex hormones. And
Mhm.
so, with that thought in mind, that is also really helpful, especially, you know, we're always trying to keep them, it's about balancing our hormone.
That is good news because I have those huge,
I
like, they're not trees,
remember,
they're vines. They're vines
yes,
of
they're
passion
vines.
fruit in my backyard. So we have like hundreds of them coming in the
Yes,
winter.
ours
Yeah.
are coming right now.
So
So
good.
yeah, so we've got a lot of passion in our house right now. So yeah, so just that passion fruit itself, high in potassium. Again, some would say even with that idea of promoting our sex organs, that it also would help us intensify orgasm.
Mhm.
That's a thought. I'm not saying that I claim this, but everyone can,
The
that's your
other
homework.
thing that occurs to me, this came up from a friend of mine who I will not name, but she is really consistent about eating a lot of fruit because she said it
Yes.
changes her taste. And she is
Hmm.
convinced of that. And she's gotten that feedback loop from her lovers.
Oh
So,
my gosh. Yes.
mango specifically, but like also a lot of fruits. And she said it makes her taste sweeter. So I'm like,
I love it.
hey,
Well, there you go.
there you go. It kind of makes sense. We are what we eat.
We
Yeah.
are what we eat. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in that sweetness category, things that are high in antioxidants, like those berries, are also found in some aphrodisiacs, like cherries and strawberries. Pomegranates are
Mm. Mm-hmm.
also in season. I'm really into seasonal cooking. And so, I think like passion fruit, those pomegranates, figs are also some beautiful examples, high in antioxidants, and then also known to kind
Why
of
do we care about
increase,
antioxidant? What does that mean?
yeah. Well, for our sex drive, it actually helps us increase our blood flow. But antioxidants, in a nutshell, it just we we might have stressors in our life, and so when we kind of involve ourselves in those stressors, antioxidants help us kind of work through cleansing out those stressors. And then also, antioxidants, again, beautify and help our heart and help our immune system and inflammation. So I think that those are all really great ways of looking at the importance of antioxidants.
Okay. Yeah, I see that
Yeah.
label, and I didn't actually totally
Yes.
understand what it meant. So thank you.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. I would say also, if you're interested, another thing that we can look at is as a property for aphrodisiacs. So not only regulating the blood, increasing blood flow would be just warming our bodies, and
Mm.
warming would go back to those peppers, but cinnamon can be a great example of that.
Does it literally warm your body?
Yeah, well,
What does that
it's
mean?
interesting. It's interesting. So it
Are we speaking
actually,
in metaphors, or
yes,
is this literal?
we are. No, no, no. This is literal, and it helps our blood sugar levels
Mm-hmm.
stay more constant. But yes, when we're talking about like literally, does it really warm our body? They're warming spices. So, and it actually, when we think about it, you'll see cinnamon more during the holidays and the
Mm-hmm.
winter months.
That's
So
true.
there's a reason behind it. So again, I like to think about the seasons, but it is known to help actually warm our body. So that's why, you have hot mulling spices,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love
all
that.
those goodness to warm our body. So these can be associated when we're looking at things like cinnamon and it's warming the body. They're often also used as that idea of increasing our libido because of that warmth.
Mm-hmm.
So we can think of it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to feel turned on when you're freezing cold. You're
Right?
shivering
That's
and
exactly
right, there's a
it.
tensing versus like the
Yeah.
relaxation that
Yeah.
comes with
It's like,
warmth
how do
and
you relax?
coziness and all
So
that.
you could have some hot cocoa with some cinnamon in it and some
Yeah.
cayenne, and there you go.
Yeah. Well,
So,
the good news is a lot of those foods are things that I think they're in my diet anyway, and they're sort of in my
yes. Yes.
reach. So it doesn't feel like they're so far flung that I can't find them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So what about adaptogens? I feel like that's
Yeah.
another word that gets introduced quite a lot. Tell us about that and how does that
Yeah.
apply?
So I love talking adaptogens. So first, an adaptogen is looking at it's again it's we can get it through food. A lot of mushrooms are adaptogenic as well, and it's the idea that no matter when life hands us stressors, and that if we are in a state of more stress, if we have more inflammation in the body, that the adaptogens help us regulate. So we can look at even cinnamon being an adaptogen as well, if we think about it, because it actually helps us keep a steady blood sugar, and not have so many spikes. And so in that way, adaptogens do the same thing. Adaptogens help us create like more of a steady drumbeat when it comes to our body and our mind. So we can think of different I would say ashwagandha is this
Hmm.
amazing herb that we can look at that is known to help us kind of create that even steady. I always think of it as an even steady drumbeat. There's things like maca powder that is popular right now, and that is also known. And it's really important to know that some adaptogens help us adapt by giving us more energy. So maca is known for that. And like another example is lion's mane is a mushroom. It's an
Hmm.
adaptogen. It really helps our mind focus and great for the brain too. But we could look at that for our sex life and libido if like say we tend to like be thinking about all sorts of like things and it's really hard for us to get into our
Yeah, well,
body.
and
you
stress is
could you
such
could
a big element of what kills the sex life is stress.
Yeah.
And so if you've got something that's going to keep your blood sugar, it's going to help with mood, and then
Yes.
also something that's going to, combat that excessive stress and stabilize, that all sounds like it's
Absolutely.
logically very
Absolutely.
helpful.
Yeah.
I hope you're enjoying the episode. Wanted to reach out to you. This is Dr. Jenn and say, hey, if you would like to deepen your own experience with this, there's a couple options. If you head over to pleasureproject.us, you will see several things. There's lots of articles. There are also merchandise items that you can buy if you're feeling enthusiastic. You want a tote bag. We've also got fun cookie cutters. You could also join the waitlist for an upcoming Pleasure Circle, which is a small group intensive that I lead. Would love to have you. If you want to know more, check out pleasureproject.us.
So you can kind of see there's so many different adaptogens out there. I'd say for our sexual wellness, there's something we use. We sell at our store a line called Anima Mundi, which I absolutely love. Adriana, who founded it, she founded it in Brooklyn, but she's from Costa Rica, and she has these pure sources of ingredients. And Suma is really ginseng. So that's another thing. We can look at it as we're talking about herbs that kind of help and get us in the mood. It really gives us a jolt of energy, but not in like a jittery way that you would have caffeine from coffee. And so they actually have lines of where they're mixing adaptogens with suma. So they'll have, hibiscus with rose powder plus the suma to give it, and it's called euphoria, and you can drink it as a tonic. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds silly, but I would say that that's way better than the drugstore pill,
Mm-hmm.
because you're using these natural sources from pure ingredients to kind of get you in that state.
Yeah. So, what about any foods or herbs that might be helpful with menopause? Because I feel
Yeah.
like women, a lot of the women I see are sort of in that zone, and they're trying supplements and that type of thing, and they're certainly
Yes.
taking HRT. But like, what can you consume that would help?
Yeah. That's a really great question. And that's really where adaptogens are so beautiful for our bodies, because believe it or not, with menopause, our hormones, as a female's body is moving through life, hormones are changing through the many different cycles that are happening. But
Mm-hmm.
especially in menopause, you're even in more of a state of flux as a female,
Mm-hmm.
because your hormones are trying to figure out. So they've moved, when you hit puberty, they've moved from your adrenals, right, to your ovaries, and now they're going back from your ovaries back to your adrenals. So your body is just trying to figure it out, and that connection with the mind and the body and your hormones can be out of balance. And so a great way of bringing it into balance is looking back at that. Ashwagandha is, I just think, one of the most important. We can look at adaptogens for being so beautiful for that. There's another
Is
herb. Yeah.
ashwagandha something you cook with, or is it like how do you
It's a
consume it?
root. It's a root. So I would put it more in powder form, or
Mm-hmm.
you could make an elixir, or you could buy an elixir.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can often find it in teas
Mm-hmm.
as well. But it's a root. But I definitely, that's one that is really, really wonderful. Maca powder that I spoke to you about previously, that can really stimulate and energize us. That can be really great too for menopause. Not so great for perimenopause, but menopause, to kind
Mm-hmm.
of give. And I think can think of even herbs and spices, but adaptogens that kind of give more. There's a need to like give more energy to the female body, because it has had a tendency to be depleted by the time we get to menopause. So the
Yeah.
more energizing that we can give it, to help regulate, because we might as females have this tendency to want to kind of just slumber. And so it's actually, and especially with hormones not being regulatory, because they're trying to figure out how they're going to regulate at that time in menopause. So how do you kind of spice it, even yourself up? And that would be the idea of maca, more like energizing in that respect. Rhodiola, we can do a whole nother talk on menopause. Rhodiola is so incredible too, from a menopause standpoint, and stress really. And so that's really what adaptogens are doing. They're helping us combat stress and stabilize our body, the cortisol levels, because that's really what stress is happening. Stress happens, our cortisol spikes. So what are things that can bring us back to homeostasis?
Mm-hmm. I love that. We'll definitely include a list of these in the show notes
Yeah.
so that if you're trying to write all this stuff down and these words are
Yes.
unfamiliar, that you can find them. So let's talk about sort of the dynamic of cooking because I know you
Yay.
love cooking and I love watching your Instagram with all the
Thanks.
magical things you're doing with kids and you have a whole cookbook on cooking for
Yes.
kids or with kids, but in general she's also makes sourdough,
Hmm.
like she does sourdough classes, she does fermenting, but sort of the I am not a cook, so I don't experience this, but I've heard
Yes.
about it that people can really feel a lot of connection to their food, and that whole process of cooking can feel sort of meditative. So if you can just kind
Mm.
of talk to that a bit about the benefits or the journey that you've experienced with cooking.
Yeah, I love this question because I really it's really transformed for me the way with my nutritional background and the way I teach classes. So yes, I have been teaching classes for quite some time on cooking, on sourdough bread baking and making your own kimchi and sauerkraut. But I started moving more in the lens of cooking and how just cooking with our friends, with our family members, with our loved ones, and how that really brings out pleasure and happiness and goodness. And connection. Absolutely. So, I definitely, one of the classes that I teach at my store and I do some privates too is the idea of culinary medicine, that food is medicine, but more that food is medicine when we aren't just eating it by ourselves or making it by ourselves, that we include others with us. And so just that sheer act of kind of slowing down. When we are slowing down, we can even think about we're going together and buying the food together, either to the farmer's market, at the market, or wherever. But then taking turns and looking at the recipe. All of our senses start to come alive when we're in the kitchen and we're making and creating together. So I think that it's such a
Yeah, because
beautiful
you're
way
touching,
of
you're seeing
connecting.
it, you're smelling it, there's texture, there's taste, there's all of it, right? It's all
Yeah.
activated.
Yeah. And even, for example, someone like you who might not want to, maybe you want to look at your partner cooking the
I
food
wanna
and
sit
you
on
don't
the other side of the
necessarily,
counter and
right?
drink a glass of wine and watch. That's what
Yeah.
I like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the polyphenols in the wine is actually also an aphrodisiac, just so you know.
Good.
So you're doing something right there in the red wine. But yeah, I mean, think about it. Your partner's cooking. Maybe they want to have you have a little taste. That's just a beautiful way of a different way of connecting. I think that we can think of sensuality with food too, and in the kitchen and at the dinner table in those fun ways when we're wanting to spice it up, no pun intended,
Yeah,
or
I
all
also
puns
feel
intended.
like cooking is one part of it, and then also eating,
Hmm.
in that communal element. Food is a lot of times where celebrating food and eating together is where a lot of connection happens, and hopefully I love it when couples sit together and have some dedicated time, and they're not just
Yeah,
clicking on the TV and tuning out, but they're actually tuning in and they're
absolutely.
enjoying the food. And I feel like chemically things are happening, and relationally, certainly things are happening when that can be possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we can use food as it can be magic if we want it to be. It certainly can be a total off-putting if you're with your partner and they're like take the food that you've made together and they just go sit, somewhere else and or sit in front of the TV. But, think about just that power of like eating, taking your time, looking at your partner, then having a bite. Even sounds silly, but like talking about the food, like what does it taste like to you? Because our
Hmm.
tastes are different,
Hmm.
right? And so I
Well,
think
and
that
looking at it with some curiosity, like when we go out to
mhm,
eat, I love that. I love looking at it. The presentation is important. Certainly the taste is
yeah.
important, but the whole atmosphere, everything. It can all be,
Yeah.
an
And I
experience
and
that.
I think that's a really good point. I think that I love going out to eat too. It makes me really happy, but we can also think about even, having a date with our loved one and having it in, and
Hmm.
it's just a fun way, I think, of again connecting with our partner in that way. So, and you can even
Yeah.
create a menu.
I had a couple that I was working with that were long distance, and they came up with this idea on their own, but they chose a recipe. They both shopped for it, and then they made it together on Zoom. And I thought that
So
was so
good.
cool, right? Is that they both
Yeah.
kind of had a parallel experience, but in their own cities, and then made it and ate it and had it so it felt like they were in community together. So I thought that was
That's really
great.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that goes back to just how food can actually bring us
Hmm.
pleasure and sensuality too, even through Zoom, which is kind of incredible, right? How
Hmm.
it can connect you in that way. So there's this idea of eating together and sitting down to eat. We talk about, serotonin and dopamine. Those are that's happening when we are connecting, making the effort to connect by just cooking together, eating together. That sounds silly, but our happiness goes up. There's research that'll show that just that itself, just that sheer act. And because I'm into nutrition, when we take the time to prepare with our loved one, our digestion is better too. So,
That
yeah.
makes sense, right? Again, that mind body
Yeah.
connection. And when you
Yeah.
feel in a calmer, more connected space, the digestion would go easier. Because think about all the nervous stomachs that exist out there and how tough it is for them. So there's obviously
Absolutely.
the influence of anxiety and what's happening in your mind.
Yeah.
How about, so I know you do fermenting classes, baking classes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something unique or different about that dynamic coming into, like, I took a sewing class and it was a disaster,
Yeah.
but I haven't taken a cooking class, but I'm not terribly good on those departments. But I don't know, when somebody's in that space, or if a couple say does it together, like what, are most of the people that are taking those classes already experienced? Or are they newbies
Well,
that are
that's such a
coming
great
in?
question. Yeah. So I just taught a culinary medicine class. This is the season of
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving and gratitude. So I did it on simplicity, pleasure, and gratitude and how we can cook. And
Mm-hmm.
the majority of my participants for my class, it was really sweet. They're new to cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had two couples and then two single individuals. And it was for them, and I bill it as it's about us creating connection. We're all going to make and create together, and then we're going to sit down and eat together. And the couple that was there, this is their second class that they've taken with me, and they really use this as a date night to kind of springboard for themselves, enhancing their cooking and bettering their skills. And then my other two that attended, they just felt like, even with their friendship groups, that they didn't really know what they were cooking or how to cook. They wanted a little bit more guidance. And so it was really fun to see, just, what I love about cooking is that it doesn't always go the way you planned. And so when we set out to cook, one of the recipe I had, and you're probably going to think I'm a terrible instructor, but I forgot the apple that we were supposed to put in, and I had persimmons. And so I said, well, we're going to roll with this. We can either omit the apple today, or we're going to cut up the persimmon and we're going to make this part of the dish this time. And both of the two who are learning to cook said that was the best part about this class, was that you showed us that we could improvise.
Permission.
And permission, right? So permission. And so I think that there's something beautifully powerful about, yeah. And these were young adults that were learning, so that they could take it to their circle of friends, which I would
Mm-hmm.
also say they're going to then take it to their partner
Well, I
too.
love too how these kids are now, the Gen
Right. I
Zers
know.
are like, there's a return to the homesteading. Like I grew
Yeah.
up like you did, right? I grew up
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
country and I just didn't get any of the skills, but there was all this, like I was in a community where there was a lot of people jarring and canning, and
Yeah.
we had big basements full of pantries, we were ready. We had like a bunker down there full of food
Yeah.
and making candles and all of the, the community coming together and sharing. And I haven't
Yeah.
seen that in so many years. And so it's kind of a resurgence of that homesteading approach,
Absolutely.
which is cool.
And really, that's how I started my business with my two business partners. It was
Mm-hmm.
just that idea of connecting us back to our senses. We can live in a high strung environment.
Mm-hmm.
Media is just at the center of everything. And our idea was, can we take pause? Can we slow down? And so I've seen that, yes, I do have a lot of female participants in my classes, but I have to say I do get a lot of couples too that come in, and they're just using it as a date or a way to connect more with their partner. And
Yeah.
then they might have a little competitive nature too when they leave. Like, for example, I had a couple of couples actually come to sourdough, and then they get their sourdough jar of sourdough starter, and they're like, we're going to see which one's better.
Yeah.
But in a healthy way too,
Uh-huh.
So,
Well, there's something cool about consuming something you made, and all the better if it
mhm.
even came from your garden. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what okay, thinking about this, I love your store, by the way.
Thank
Stores,
you.
I've been to all 3 of them, and they all have kinda different curated
Yeah.
items in them that are speak to the area, but lots of really great gifts and little items that feel special and kind of unique. What would you say
Thanks.
what are your top 2 sellers?
Oh, that's hard. Well, you're going to laugh when I say this. Cards, but cards for your loved ones. So we
Okay,
sell a
yeah.
lot of cards. We do, to be honest. Cards and socks. I'm fully honest with you. I want to say it's that Euphoria Anima Mundi drink,
People are like, "What is
but
that?" Cards and
yeah,
socks, I understand
cards
those
and
2
socks,
things.
you know?
Okay, I'm remembering, like, there was little tins of, like, I don't know, is it tuna or, like,
Oh,
sardines
yeah.
or something? Like,
Hmm.
there's
No, we
candles,
have
there's
the
kids
best.
stuff, there's all kinds
Yeah.
of things.
Well, and that's the idea. It's kind of like your general store.
Mhm.
Well, it is not just like it is your general store. So we're constantly curating it. And I love that I can do this too. It's with my eye on health and well being. I was just actually at the store right before this and just letting our some customers know the products that we're bringing in are sustainable. And then, for example, the chocolate that we choose is
Mhm.
bean to bar that we offer, and then it's also sweetened. It's refined sugar free, so either with date powder or coconut sugar. That's better for our bodies. And then again, I'll just speak to the things that I love. We just
What
started
about just
carrying.
I'm just thinking about too, the holidays coming. I know you have non-alcoholic
Yeah, I was just going to
options
bring that up.
that are
Yeah.
good. Okay.
So I love that. And we just started carrying this beautiful non-alcoholic drink with lion's mane in it. And I highlighted lion's mane earlier. And it's also sweetened with a little bit of monk fruit, so it's five, it's very low sugar, I would say, which is different I feel like a lot of non-alcoholic elixirs they add more sugar to compensate. And so I really love that. And it's by this company called Little Saints that we brought in. And then we love carrying local. So we have a local company by the name of Tilden, and they make their own non-alcoholic. And it's not sweetened with sugar. It's botanically sweetened, and we happen to really love that. We have a variety of shrubs, which are drinking vinegars, and I love Sarah from Side Yard Shrubs. Her vinegars can be used for mocktails or cocktails if you wanted, but they're just using a shrub is basically a combination of normally fruit sugar and botanicals, and she's just using the botanicals, so fruit and the apple cider vinegar. So you're getting that really good mix too.
I think
So,
last year I actually
yeah.
went there and bought almost all of my presents, like, in one visit because there's such
Thank
variety. There's
you.
clothing. I literally bought some Birkenstocks. I bought
Yeah.
some, I think, hot sauce. I bought, like, it was just like,
Yes.
right?
And
There's
now you
just
know
all
that
kinds of
hot
things.
sauce is gonna
Yeah.
spice up
Jewelry,
help your
there's like everything.
libido. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so then what professionally, what's next for you? What do you got coming up?
That's a really good question. I'm really still into this idea of fermentation. That's just something that's a steady place in my heart. So at our new Santa Barbara location, I'm doing something called the Gut Club, and I'm connecting. We do a seasonal ferment each month, and that's been really beautiful to curate, as I love connecting people. So gut health again is actually really great for menopause. It's really great for inflammation. And so just how to do that sort of thing. And then I've been adding more yoga to my repertoire too these days, which I'm sure you'll be excited about that.
Yeah.
But I think next I was just saying to my husband that I would love to take the I love planning menus and creating these different classes. So creating some zines with that in mind. So even doing a zine all on aphrodisiacs and making aphrodisiac food boards and recipes that can get you in the mood. And I've done a whole series this past year, based on different culinary medicine ideas of immune, our immune system, detoxing, and that sort of thing. So I'm kind of wanting to do some more writing. I know I have some books out and I kind of want to do some more of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
thank you for coming on today. We will link
you're
Heritage Goods
welcome.
and Supply in the show notes.
Sounds
But if you
great.
are a local Santa Barbara person, you should definitely stop by one of their stores. And if you're not, you can find it online. Actually, they've got
Thank
a
you.
really beautiful newsletter that comes out pretty often and has all kinds of stuff that you can order. So, well, thanks again,
Sounds good.
Emma.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Dr. Jenn. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please leave us a review and leave a comment if something struck you. We'd love to get the feedback. It really helps the podcast. And if you want to reach me, go ahead and direct message me on Instagram, or you can reach me at jen@rivieratherapy.com. Thanks.